Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp with the Limp, and I'm here with a good one for you. This is Mirages. This is by Vuca Games, and it is designed by Dirk. I hope I'm saying this. Blenniman. Forgive me, Dirk. I'm trying. I'm doing the best I can, buddy. This is based on the Formation series. And the Formation series is the same game system that was used in Crossing the Line Aiken, right? In 2044, that was one of my top games of the year. I loved that system. I loved how it operated, the whole command system. I thought it was excellent and it really did a good job of showing the fatigue and the stresses that you can put on a formation by, activating it so much and, the stresses of combat. Now, this one is set in 1941, and it is in North Africa. So we have some different forces involved than the ones that we saw in Crossing the Line, but it's still using that same system that I love so much in Crossing the Line. So let's go ahead and go down to the table, take a look at it, show you the components, show you all the pieces, give a quick overview of how the game plays, and then we'll come back up here for some final thoughts on it. All right, so here we are down at the table. I've got the map set up. I've got one of the scenarios already set up on the board so you guys could see it. And we're quickly going to go over the components of the game, everything that comes with it. We've got a couple of dice, just regular D10s, nothing special. We have our rule book. So this is the core rules now for the system. So for the Formation series, the core rules, version 1.0. And then here is for the specialized. So it's only really got about a page of specialized rules in here. And then the rest of this is the setup for the scenarios themselves. Let's see. Yeah, this right here is it for the specialized rules for this specific game. We also have a couple of player aids, and I love it. I freaking love it when publishers include stuff like this right here. This is the setup. It makes it so easy. I hate it when publishers have like a college looking graph and small ass type of where the units go. It's like, no, here's a picture. Here's a little grid coordinate for the hex, everything you need right here. When you're setting this up, you can, set it right here on the map and put each one of the units right there next to it. So, you've got the exact right unit and then place them on the map. It takes 10 minutes and you're done. And then of course, reinforcements are listed down separately. There are two of these, front and back. Which one did I set up? I think I set up Operation Brevity. Yeah, because there should be 3 British and 2 German. Yep. And the reinforcements down here. So this is the actual scenario that you see set up here. And this one does have included. Now, these are new, but it's not a specialized rule. Evidently, these are going to be included from now on. Is these victory point counters. So they're actual counters you can put on the map. Let's see if we can find one. Yeah, here's a strong point and one of those. So like a victory point hex will have a counter that goes on the map, and you can tell that it's exactly where it needs to be because it matches the graphics on the map. I mean, look at that. You can't even really barely see the counter because it blends in perfectly. Love it. So like I said, technically 4, but it's just 2 sheets, front and back, with all the different scenarios on them ready to go. After that, we've got a couple of these player aids, and I like this. This is a folding player aid, and this has everything that you need to know. The sequence of play, the terrain effects chart, your action point rolling, the stacking limits. Here's your combat results table, your movement points, die roll modifiers, even how it's going to work for armor superiority when you're figuring that out, because there is a little bit of a figuring it out, like working things out on, does this go to this? This has nothing to do with solitaire. This isn't like AI. This is for the tank and anti-tank points. Easy to follow graph to know exactly who's going to have armor superiority. Love that. Your combat sequence listed down step by step, how everything's going to go over here on the left. And then on the right, we have our hit distribution, just like you're going to have for that armor, the tank superiority. This is how hits have to be distributed. So if you're going to retreat, if you're going to take step losses, whatever is going on, this is how that works. And then it is explained down here on the back, or bottom rather. Here on the back, we've got our victory conditions, points, how much all that's going to do, command and supply, and then a brief overview of the unit types and exactly what all of the numbers and symbols on the counters mean. This little sheet here is one-stop shopping for everything. There's 2 of these in the game, so each player can have one. And they include a little appendix here, a little, hey, this is where you find out about formation reactions or forced retreat. It's listed down here in the rulebook. Here's a quick blurb on how it works, but you can find the full thing there. Love that. Very streamlined, easy for the player to use and get right into the game. If you've already played Crossing the Line, you can pretty well jump into this. There's just a couple things you have to read about when it comes to this game versus the other. I left some counters on the sheet so I could show you guys. Relatively thick, about medium thickness for counters, all pre-rounded, nice, feel good in your hand, and they have that little bit of a tile feel to them, so like the counters. And while I'm at it, let me show you this. We'll get into it when we start talking about the game itself, but the strong points. This is new to the game. It was not in Crossing the Line, but it's not going to be new to the system. I believe strong points are going to be in the core rules from here on out. But when I say strong points, I'm talking about these hexagonal counters here. So you've got 2 types of hexagonal counters. You have the ones for the victory point hexes, and then you have the strong points. And FYI, these strong points are front and back. There is full, which is the gray side, and then depleted here on the back. Also, we have a couple of these little player aids, and you're like, okay, what is this? This is our turn track for each of the different scenarios. These are front and back, just like the setup is. I've already got one here on the board, so you're going to place this for whatever scenario you're playing, because each of them have a different set of turns that are going to be used for their specific scenario. So depending on which scenario you are going to play, you'll slide that out, you'll place the other one down, whichever one you're using, like that. And of course, the map itself is mounted, and you can see it looks quite nice. The only thing that I would kind of adjust on it is there's 2 different types of roads. There's actual road, which you see here is the dark line, but then there's also what's called trails that are on this map. And if you're back a little bit, like I've got you on the high view here, it's harder to see those. But if we zoom way down in, you can easily make out the trails now that you're really close to the board. I do wish they were maybe just a touch darker, maybe change their color or something to distinguish them from the roads, because they don't easily stand out on the board, but they're not so blended in that you can't find them. It's just those of us who are a little older, getting a little age on our eyes, might have a harder time seeing them. All right, the only other components that we have are the admin style counters, which I actually find this little ocean area right here is a good place to put them. Your out of command, your improved positions, your step losses. They can easily be placed right here just to have a spot to have them close to the board, but out of the way. You will need a little ball to have your combat counters. That's what all of these are. We'll touch on those in just a second. Now, all this here at the top, this is your formation tracking over here, and then your initiative. So how turns going to work in this game is you're going to have your admin phase. That's your recovery, reinforcements, replacements, the usual stuff that you have done during an admin phase is taken care of, the basic stuff. The ops phase, that's where we start getting into the meat of the game, and that's when you're going to be looking here. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to determine initiative. And we've got a little track right here. The counter is double-sided to determine who has initiative. And each of the scenarios will tell you who's going to start with initiative. But once you actually get into it, there is going to be a roll. Each side's going to roll off trying to get initiative after the formation is activated. So once one side has activated a formation, you aren't guaranteed that the other side's going to go. It can be either one. But a modifier is progressively added that will pretty much ensure by the end of it that the other side's going to get a turn, and then this gets dropped back down to the bottom. So let's say, our British have activation. We get up here to +2. That means the next time we roll off, the Germans get a +2 to getting activation. If the British get again, well, then they get a +4 for the Germans, and then +6, and whatever, based on the levels until you get down here to the end where it's like, they get a +10. They're going to get activation. So what do I mean by activation? That's what these are up here. There's a counter for each one of your formations. Formations are these groups of units that we see on our deployment board. So this is a formation, this is a formation, this formation. So 7th Armored, 22nd Guards, the Kampen Group, and not sure what this one's called over here. All of these are considered formations, and here at the top, it tells you what their activation level is. That determines where their counter is placed on these tracks. So what you're going to do is you look here at the action points and the formation's activation level. So let's just take, for example, our 7th Armored up here. They are at level 7. They are pretty high. They're right here at the max. So we would roll a d10 and then look here to determine how many action points they're going to get for their activation. See, it's 1 to 10 for our d10. And then there are 2 columns. The 2 columns exist because you can activate a formation or you can react to an enemy activating their formation. So it's basically like a op fire at an operational level. The only thing is if you are reacting, you will tend to get less points. So the left side of the column in black is your actual action points. The right side in red is your reaction points. So if we were activating our 7th Armored, we roll, we got an 8, that should give them a lot. We look over, they get 7 action points to spend, and then they drop down. You take your little counter, mark it down, hey, I've got 7 action points, and then each time you activate them, they are going to tick down. There are certain things in the game that can cause your formation to drop all the way to 0. Things like your HQ being out of supply and activating the formation will cause you to lose all of it in one go instead of a slow tick down. But basically, as you repeatedly activate a formation, they are going to tend to get less and less action points to use until you hit the point to where you can't activate them anymore. Now, without getting long-winded into the activations, they did include a different set of rules for activations for different units in this game to where it can be more streamlined, more standard, and it wouldn't have as many swings to it. So basically it takes the rolling the dice out and it determines what activation level you're at. And based on this level, you get X amount of points. You can use either, but you have to stick with whichever one you start with. Each one of the counters will say up here in that top right, how many points they get back at the recovery segment at the end of each formation. So when all of these formations are done, you're passing and you're starting your next turn, they will recover that many spaces up on the track, but they can only go to their maximum level. Like the 7th Armored can only go up to level 7. It doesn't matter if they have points left, they wouldn't be able to go higher than that. Some won't be able to go as high, like this one can only go to 2. This one can go up to 7, 4, 2. Generally, they kind of start where their max is. All right, so what do you do when you activate a formation? Wow, that's a good question. You have AP points. You can move for a point. You can refit, so recover. You can build an improved defense. So you could put one of these counters on your unit. You lose it if you take step losses or you move away, stuff like that, but it does give you better odds in combat when you're defending. You can perform a hasty attack, or you can add extra bonus points, +1 for a regular, +2 for a prepared attack. The more points you spend towards an attack, the more benefits that you're going to get. So the more modifiers essentially are going your direction. Your HQ can contribute more, basically nothing at hasty, half at regular, and full modifiers there at a prepared attack. So our 7th armor down over here, we have all of our units. We got 7 action points to spend, so we can use them to move our units. Our units will be able to move based on their movement factors. Looking at our counters, the top tells us what the unit is. The little 5 there, just to the left of that tank, is its effectiveness rating. Bottom left is its combat value. Middle is its tank or anti-tank points. In this case, this will be tank points. If that number were white, that would be anti-tank points. And the bottom right tells us our movement points that we can spend. If it is in a white box, it's leg. If it's in this red hexagon, it is track or wheeled movement. And basically, you will spend those points to move your units, conduct your attacks against the enemy forces trying to take whatever objective you're after. Now, I mentioned these earlier, but these are strong points. These are new to the game. They weren't crossing the line, but I do like the inclusion of these. So they will be placed on the map based on scenario instructions, and they will belong to a certain side. So in this case, the Germans are being attacked by the British, so the Germans have strong points. Those strong points will gain them bonuses. So you see here, it's got anti-tank values and increases its effectiveness rating. However, if a unit ever leaves it, so if this ever doesn't have a German unit on it, it flips over, or if an enemy unit moves into that place. This is effectively the reduced side of a strong point, and it can provide these bonuses to enemy units if they are in this place. This side cannot, this side can. It will provide it to whoever is there, but you can never recover a strong point. So once it's depleted like this, a strong point can never come back to its full side. All right, so here I just grabbed out a couple of quick units just to give you guys a brief demonstration of how combat is going to take place. So let's say our British tanks are attacking the German tanks. They're going to determine how they are conducting the attack. Is it a hasty attack? Is it a prepared attack, regular attack? That's going to be determined by how many points they add extra to it. +1 for a regular, +2 for a prepared. So total of 3 points for prepared, 2 for regular, 1 for a hasty. There is the possibility for retreat before combat. If you want to do that, there's roll off to determine if it's effective or not. If combat is going to take place, that's where you're going to draw the random counters that I talked about. And that number on the far left is the effectiveness value. So for our British tank here, it has an effectiveness of 4, so it's looking at that bottom row. This German tank has an effectiveness of 6. So we flip it to the back side of this counter where it goes up to 7, and that middle row is where it's going to be looking. Now, this is where you're ultimately going to get your results for that combat results table, the odds that you're looking for. This number is multiplied by your combat factor depending on what type of attack. So for our British guy here, sadly enough, he drew a very bad counter. It doesn't matter if he was a hasty, regular, or prepared attack, he would only be getting a 1. But most of the time, it's not going to be that bad. When it comes to the defender, it's similar to how the hasty, regular, and prepared works over here. The defender is either going to be the farthest left column If they are disrupted, if they are regular, they're going to be that middle white column. And if they are an improved defense, they get that right green column. So the right column is the one you want for both attacking and defending because they tend to have the best modifiers. In this case, the green does have the best modifier. So you are either going to have a 1, 2, or 3 multiplying your combat factor. Here, sadly, the British only got a 1, so their combat factor remains a 5. The Germans got a 3, so they get to multiply theirs by 3, so it's 5 attacking 18. That did not work out well for them. And to determine the rest of the modifiers, it's going to determine based on the attacker, whether they've got tank points. Do they have more tank points? In this case, they do. Do they have HQ support? That's determined again, whether it's a regular or prepared attack. They will get either half or all of that bottom circle amount on their HQ counter, the one that says 8 here for their HQ. But those aren't multipliers. Those are modifiers. Make sure I say that right. That's after you roll. That's either going to plus or minus the die roll. I know combat can sound a little fiddly. It does have a lot going on with it here. But once you get used to it, it really is not that bad. You're simply determining what your effectiveness rating is. That determines here. And then it's simply what type of attack you have, hasty, regular, prepared, and then what type of defense the defender has. Are they disrupted, which is the counter flipped over? You can tell by that stripe running down them. If they are disrupted, if they don't have anything, or if they are in an improved position. Then you're simply going to consult your combat results table as normal, depending on what type of ratio that you have and what type of terrain that you're in. That is something that I do like about this game, is that the terrain you are in is going to determine where you are when it comes to your ratios. And just to show you very quickly what I mean by that, you see here, clear 1 to 8 is on the far left, but broken, village, point of interest, it's a 1 to 4. If you're on a hill, it's a 1 to 3. Where's 1 to 1? 1 to 1 is here for hill. 1 to 1 is hill here for those middle ones. And then 1 to 1 is all the way over here for clear. So determined by what terrain you are attacking, that ratio is going to be somewhere here on this column. And then it's simply, again, down here at the bottom, you roll your D10, add your plus or minus, determined by the modifiers you got from your support points. And you're going to have a ratio. Left number is how many hits go to the attacker. Right number is how many points go towards the defender. And any ones that are in red have to do an effectiveness check, which you can think of as basically a morale check. Failing your effectiveness check will cause you to have to take either retreats or extra step losses. So that is the game in a nutshell. I know it's a high level view, but that gives you the nitty gritty of how it's going to be played. Let's pop back up and do some final thoughts about it. And all right, we're back. We have gone over all the components of Mirages and how it plays and all the cool stuff that I like so much about it. It should be pretty obvious that I'm going to like this game since I liked the previous one so much. I do appreciate that now it has a standard rulebook that's released with it, and then also the scenario book has like the specific rules for this specific game. So what that tells me is that this set of rule system is going to be used in other games in the future, and I definitely like that. Obviously, I like the system. I like how it operates. I like the command structure. I like how combat works, how the action point system is used. I like every aspect of it. So I want to see more of that in the future. Now, this one isn't as good to me as crossing the line, but that has to do with just the theater and the location. I'm not as interested as much in Northern Africa as I am in the conflict of Europe. Just like some people like the Eastern Front, some people like the Western Front, some people like the Pacific. The Pacific is one of my favorite areas of World War II. So that has to do with just preference. That's nothing against the game itself. But there are those who are into the North African part of the campaign and the war. And if you are, maybe you want to look into this one instead of crossing the line. And really speaking about it, there's just so much to like here. Like when you look at the combat system and how step losses are accrued, I think that's much more thematic and symbolic of what you would see in real life. Versus some of the other systems that are a little more simplistic, where you have two-step units and full strength, half strength gone. Now you've got the combat strength of the unit, and it's going to take up to that many step losses throughout the course of combat before it's gone. I talked about this a lot in Crossing the Line, but I think that did a very good job of demonstrating the significant firepower you could see in something like a heavy tank, but you're only going to have one or two of those heavy tanks in a formation, or anti-tank gun, whatever it is. But because of that, it couldn't take a whole lot of step losses, right? So its combat strength might be a one or a two, and you're like, why is it so low? This huge gun, so powerful. But that's because it's tank points or anti-tank points, depending on what the unit is, but we'll say tank points is so high. So it's 10 points or 15 points, whatever it is. And that shows the significant amount of firepower that it's bringing to that combat. So they don't have many tanks that they can lose, hence the lower combat strength and less step losses they can take. But that huge factor, that swing that they get to add into combat. Now, that's not as pronounced in this game because it's the earlier stage of the war, 1940, 1941. So you don't see as many of those just heavy, heavy, heavy vehicles. So you do see higher combat strengths, fives and sixes in this game, and lower tank points, in the similar range, that 4 to 6 to 7 areas. So the punch that they're throwing out isn't as swingy as some of the heavier vehicles later in the war, but there are more of these lighter vehicles, so you can incur more of those step losses. Also, the chit pull mechanic when it comes to combat, and the fact that you're going to pull that chit for the attacker and the defender, and it's going to matter how many action points you've spent on that combat action. Is it a hasty attack, a regular attack, a prepared attack? Prepared attack does really good. You get all the support, you get all the good stuff with it, but that costs you 3 action points. You can conduct 3 hasty attacks for the cost of 1 prepared attack. But that shows you that you're getting all those extra bonuses into that 1 attack. So if you need one to succeed at all costs, you put those points into that prepared attack. Or maybe you want to just scatter it across the line, get a bunch of little attacks going. You can go that route. You can do a bunch of little hasty attacks, but you're not going to have those extra modifiers, that extra support that you would in a more prepared advance. Now, the systems are different, but it does remind me of the Enemy Action series, Enemy Action Ardennes, Enemy Action Kharkov, in the way that those chit pulls for combat show the preparedness, right? So doing things like having combined arms and extra support or artillery support, whatever, would give you the bonuses. The chits that you pulled would be more effective, but it still gave that opportunity for swings, the outlying factors. You still see that here in the multipliers. Even if you've done everything right, you might pull a bad shit. You might get a bad modifier. You might get that 1 and you're not getting a huge bump into your combat modifier. But if you do it properly, the odds are in your favor that you're going to get that higher modifier in a prepared attack with effective unit cohesion versus doing the hasty attack without the effectiveness. So yeah, I mentioned it when we talked about it while we're at the table. The components are good. The extra inclusion of things like the extra little turntable markers, depending on which scenario that you're playing, it's a little bit less counter heavy as the other ones that I've tried. But that's fine. It just each game is going to be different. I think for you guys, it's really going to come down to what theater you're into more. You know, if you're into the Western Front more and you like Europe conflicts and those units, whatever's participating there, crossing the line might be the one that you go for. If you really like the Africa campaign, Mirages is going to be the one that you're going to check out. Obviously, though, since I like the system as much as I do, it's definitely a recommend. I'm looking forward to seeing what else they release. I would love to see this tried to be applied in the Pacific Theater. I don't know how well they'd be able to do that. The conflicts were a little bit different there. You know, the spaced out nature, aircraft carriers, troop deployments, and all that crap. But maybe they can't do it in the Pacific. But hey, we still got Eastern Front we can check out. So I'd like to see a game set in that theater as well. So yeah, at the end of the day, Mirages definitely gets the recommend from Gimpy. It's a good game system. Really like how everything just works well together. And again, the only thing that I can really ding it on is the same thing that I dinged crossing the line on is the fact that the system can get a little fiddly, a little cumbersome because you do have a lot of rolls going on. You're rolling for the formation activation, you're rolling for those action points, yeah, then you're rolling for combat, and you're rolling for this, and you're rolling for that. You've got a lot of rolls, a lot of chip pulls, a lot of moving parts going on. They're good moving parts. It works well together, but you're not going to streamline this. It's not beer and pretzels. It's not a simple combat results table where you just roll, hey, I got a 6, I got top, yay, and call it a day. There's a lot more things you have to worry about. Things like your effectiveness rating. Are you having to retreat? Are you retreating? Is it a forced retreat? Is it not a forced retreat? It's a voluntary retreat. It's a lot of moving parts. It can get cumbersome. But like I said, the juice is worth the squeeze. So make sure you guys check it out. Mirages by Vuca Games. All right, that's going to be it for me. You guys take care. I'll catch you in the next one.